I wonder, this is the Empire Builders podcast, by the way. Dave Young here, Steve Semple there. I wonder, Steven, if we could do this whole episode without mentioning the name of the company that we're going to be talking about. And I ask that for the simple reason of they already know. They already know what we're talking about. They already know we're talking about them. They probably knew we were going to talk about them. They
Because of all the research I've done on my computer.
No, 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 because they're listening to everything, and they probably already know the date that this is gonna come out and how long it's I don't know, right? But, when they first started, um, and I don't think we felt that way about them, and I can remember back in the early 2000s, just
No, they
after the turn.
in the early days, they had a statement. Larry Page was very famous,
Yeah, do no evil.
"Do no evil. Do no evil," and that was a very, very big part, and in fact, in the early stages, they made a bunch of decisions that challenged the company financially because they were like, "This is not good experience for the person on the other end." I wonder if anybody's guessed yet what we're gonna be talking about.
Well, then you go public and, it's all about shareholders, right? It's like the shareholders are like, "Well, we don't care if you do evil or not, we want you to make money." That's
Right.
what it's
Well,
about,
yeah, and you
'cause you
get
have that
big and
obli
all those things happen.
yeah.
So this company that we're talking about, we'll go a little while before we'll let the name out, was founded on September 4th in 1998 was when it was actually
Oh,
founded.
98. It goes
Yeah,
back
yeah,
before the
and it was
turn of the century, kids.
yeah, and it was
There
founded
there's
by Larry Page and and Sergey Brin, who met at Stanford. Interesting note, the Stanford grads also created Yahoo!
Okay, yeah.
That's giving you another little clue about
They're
who it
probably
is that we might be talking about.
in the same geek club.
Yeah. So 1998, I was thinking back 1 year after I graduated from university, Windows 98 is launched, and believe it or not, the last Seinfeld episode aired.
Are you kidding me?
No, isn't that crazy?
98.
Yeah.
I mean, I was busy raising 4 daughters in '98,
Yeah. So today,
and yeah.
this company, as you said, because you didn't want me to name the company, this company has more net income than any other business in US history. It has now, I gotta let the cat out of the bag, 8.5 billion searches a day happen, and yes, we're talking about the birth of Google,
Yeah.
which is also now known as part of the Alphabet Group.
Alphabet, yeah, it's funny how they gotta get a name that means everything. So, what did they have a name before Google? I know Google was like it's a number really, right? It's a gazillion, bajillion, Googleplex.
As we'll go into a little bit later, they actually spelt it wrong when they registered the site. That's not actually the way that the word is spelt. I'll have to go. But yeah, the first iteration was a product called Backrub was the name of it.
Backrub. Okay.
Alphabet also owns the second largest search engine, which is YouTube. Together, like basically it's a $2 trillion business, which is, larger than the economy of Canada. Like it's this amazing thing. Going back to 1998, there are dozens of search engines all using different business models. Now today Alphabet's like 90% in the market, up until this point, it's been unassailable. And it's gonna be really interesting to see what the future of AI and whatnot brings to that business. But we're not talking about the future, we're talking about the past here. So back to the start. So Larry Page was born in Lansing, Michigan. His dad is a professor of computer science. His mom is also a computer academic, and this is in the 70s. And between 1979 and 80, his dad does a stint at Stanford and then also goes to work at Microsoft. Now, Larry and Sergey meet at Stanford and they're very ambitious. They're equal co-founders. But Larry had this thing he also talked about where he said you need to do more than just invent things. It wasn't about inventing things, it was about creating things that people would use. Here's what's going on in the world of the web at this time. To understand what's going on, here's some web stats. In 1993,
Mhm.
there's 130 websites in the world. In 1996, 3 years later, there's 600,000 websites. That's a
Woohoo.
723% growth year over year. Like, the world has never seen growth like that before.
Right. Yeah. it was amazing to experience it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
people that are younger than us don't realize what it was. Josh Johnson, the comedian, has a great routine on, trying to explain to people what it was like before Google. Like,
Ugh,
you needed
how
to
about
know
what it was
something.
like for the internet?
Yeah, you had to ask somebody who knew. If you needed the answer to a question, you had to ask somebody, and if they didn't know, then you had to find somebody else, or you had to go to the library and ask a librarian, and they would help you find the answer,
Well, I had
mainly
an
by giving
encyclo
you a book that may or may not have the answer.
and here's an important point. I want you to put a pin in that research. We're gonna come back
With
to it.
the
I was about to go down a rabbit hole, but let's come back to this in just
Okay.
a moment because this is a very, very important point here about the birth of Google. So Larry and Sergey first worked on systems to allow people to make annotations and notes directly on websites with no human involved. But the problem is that that could just overrun a site because there was no systems for
Yeah.
ranking or order or anything along that lines. And the other question they started to ask is which annotations should someone look at? Like what are the ones that have authority? And this then created the idea of page rankings. And all of this became messy, and this led to them to asking the question, what if we just focused on ranking web pages, which led to ranking search? Now, whole idea was ranking was based upon authority and credibility, and they drew this idea from academia. So when we would do research, Dave, and you
Sure.
would find that one book, what did you do to figure out who the authority was on the topic? You went and you saw what book did that cite? What research did this book cite? And the further you went back in those citations, the closer you got to the true authority, right? Do you remember doing that type
Yeah,
of
sure.
research? Right.
Yeah.
So they looked at that and they went, well, that's how you establish credibility and authority is who's citing who. Okay. They decided that what they were going to do was do that for the web. And the way the web did that was links,
Right.
especially in the early days where a lot of it was
Yeah,
research.
if a whole bunch of people link to you, then that gives you authority over what it like, the words that they use to link on and,
Right. Well, and also in the early days, those links carried a lot of metadata around what the author thought, like why was the link
yeah.
there? So in the early days, backlinks were incredibly important. Now, SEO weasels are still today talking about backlinks, which is complete. Like,
Yeah.
dude, backlinks, yeah, they kind of matter, but they're anyway. I could go down a rant
Yeah, I
rabbit
mean,
hole.
it's like anything, the grifters figure out a way to hack the system and make something that's not authoritative seem like it is.
Yeah, it's harder that you can't hack the system today. But anyway, but the technology challenge, how do you figure out who's backlinked to who? Well, the only way you can do it is you have to crawl the entire web, copy the entire web, and reverse engineer the computation to do this.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. I mean, we've been talking about Google's algorithm for as long as Google's been around.
Right.
That's the magic of it, right?
Yeah, and in the early days, with them doing it as a research project, they could do it because there was hundreds of sites. If this happened even 2 years later, like 1996, it would have been completely impossible because the sheer size. Like to do
Sure.
it as a research project, right? Now they called this system Backrub. And they started to shop this technology to other search engines because, again, remember there was Hotbot and Lyco and Archie and AltaVista and Yahoo and Excite and InfoSeek. There were a ton of these search
Don't
engines
forget
and
Ask Jeeves.
Ask Jeeves. Actually,
Yeah.
Ask Jeeves might have even been a little bit later, but yeah,
And
Ask
then
Jeeves was one of
there
the
was
ones
one
that
that
was
was
around.
Dogpile that was it would search a bunch of search engines.
Right. Yeah, there was all sorts of things.
Just all
And there
yeah.
was yeah, and there was another one called Excite. And they got close to doing a deal with Excite. They got a meeting with them, and they were looking at a license deal, $1,000,000 for Backrub. And they would go into the summer and they would implement it because they were still students at Stanford. And they got so far as running for the executives there a side by side test. They did demo this test, and the results were so good with Backrub. Here's what the execs at Excite said: "Why on earth would we want to use your engine? We want people to stay on our site."
Mm,
'Cause again, it would push people
yeah.
off the site. Because web portals had this mentality of keeping people on the site
Yeah.
instead of having them leave. So it was a no deal. They go back to school and no one wants Backrub, so they decide to build it for themselves at Stanford. And the original name was gonna be Whatbox.
What box? I'm
What
glad they
box?
didn't use what box.
Yeah, they thought it sounded too close to a porn site or something like that, and
Okay, I'll give him that.
Larry's dorm mate suggested Google, which is the mathematical term of 10 to the 100th power, but it's spelled Googol.
Google.
Correct.
Mhm.
Now, there's lots of things here. Did Larry Page misregister? Did he change the site purposely? Like, there's all sorts of different stories there, but the one that seems to be the most popular, or at least liked the most, is that he misspelt it when he did the registration to Goggle.
And I think that's probably, a good thing because if when you hear it said, that's kind of the
That's
first thing you
kinda how
go
you spell
to
it.
how you spell it, so
Yeah,
I think we'd have figured it out, but
we would've, but things that are easy are always better,
yeah.
right? So, by spring of '98, they're doing 10,000 searches a day, all out of Stanford University.
Wait, 10,000 a day all out of one place.
Are using university resources. And everyone else is just using keywords on a page, which led to keyword stuffing. So again, another one of these BS SEO keyword
Mhm,
stuffing.
mhm.
Now, at one point, one half of the entire computing power at Stanford University is being used for Google searches, and it's the end of the '98 academic year, and these guys are still students there. Now, sidebar, Stanford owns to this day, Stanford still owns a chunk of Google.
Okay.
So, it worked out well for Stanford.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Now, Larry and Sergey need some seed round financing because they've got to get it off of Stanford. They've got to start building computers. They raise $1 million. Here's an interesting thing I had no idea. Guess who one of the first round investors are who ended up owning 25% of the company in the seed round?
Stay tuned. We're going to wrap up this story and tell you how to apply this lesson to your business right after this.
Hey.
What?
Shh. Steven created something new.
That's not surprising. Why are you being so quiet?
Well, not very many people know.
Really?
Yes, it's new and it's amazing.
Like tail wagging amazing?
Mm-hmm.
Well, tell me.
Using StoriesToSell.com.
Okay.
It's a new free 90-minute session.
Why?
Because people have a hard time figuring out how to tell their business story.
Yeah, and?
This leverages Steven's TEDx talk on the 4 ingredients for telling a compelling story.
It's a great talk for sure, but how can...
Don't worry. You'll get help figuring out your story quickly, and you'll have one you can use right away. You'll even learn where to use it.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, you can sign up at usingstoriestosell.com.
Wait, isn't our tea time coming up?
Oh, yeah, let's go.
You're away, Dave.
Let's pick up our story where we left off, and trust me, you haven't missed a thing.
Guess who one of the first round investors are who ended up owning 25% of the company in the seed round? Jeff Bezos.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. Jeff Bezos was one of the first 4 investors in Google.
Okay, well,
Isn't that
here we are.
incredible?
Yeah.
So now Alta Vista created a very interesting technology because Alta Vista grew out of Dell Computers, who, were building supercomputers at the time. And they were basically one of the pre-leaders in search, because what they would do is everybody else crawled the internet in series. They were crawling the internet in parallel. And this was a
Okay.
big technological breakthrough. So in other words, they didn't have to do it one at a time. They could send out a whole ton of crawlers, crawling all sorts of different things, all sorts of different pieces, bringing it back and could reassemble it.
Gotcha.
So Alta Vista also had, therefore, the most number of sites indexed. And I remember back in the day launching websites like pre-2000. And yeah, you would launch a site and you would have to wait for it to be indexed. And it could
You'd
take
submit
weeks.
it. Yeah, there were things you could do to
And there was things you
submit it
could
to the search
submit.
engines.
Yes. Yeah. And you would sit and you would wait. And you'd be like,
Mhm,
oh, it
mhm.
got crawled. Yeah. It was crazy. Like, we don't think about that today.
And
put
you'd
up a
make
site,
you'd make
scroll.
updates to your site, and you'd need to resubmit it so it would get crawled again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Because there was new
and
information.
people would search your site, and it would be different than the site that you would have because the updates hadn't come through and all those other things.
Yeah.
And in 1998, Yahoo was the largest player. They were a $20 billion business, and they had a hand-curated guide to the internet, which worked at the
Mhm.
time, but the explosive growth killed that. There was a point where Yahoo just
Yeah.
couldn't keep up with it. Then Yahoo went to this hybrid where the top part was hand curated and then backfilled with search engine results. Now, originally, Google was very against the whole idea of banner ads, and this was the way everyone else was making money. Because what they knew is people didn't like banner ads. But you're tracking eyeballs, you're growing, you need more infrastructure, right? Because basically their way of doing is they're copying the entire internet and putting it on their servers, and you need more money. Now, one of the other technological breakthroughs is Google figured out how to do this on a whole pile of cheap computers that they just stacked on top of each other, but you still needed money.
Yeah.
At this moment, had no model for making money. They were getting all these eyeballs. They were faster because they built data centers around the world because they also figured out that by decentralizing it, it was faster. And they had lots of constraints. So what they needed to do at this point was create a business model. So what does one do when one needs to create a business model? Well, it's early 1999. They're running out of money. They'll hire Salar Kalangard, who's a Stanford student, and they give him the job of writing a business plan.
Yeah.
Here, intern, you're writing the business plan for how we're going to make money.
Okay.
Go put together a pitch deck.
I wonder if they're still using the plan.
What they found at that point was there was basically 3 ways to make the money. Way number 1 was sell Google search technology to enterprises. In other words, companies can use this to search their own documents in intranets.
I
Number
remember
2,
that. Yeah.
number 2, sell ads, banner ads. And number
Mhm.
3, license search results to other search engines.
Okay.
So based upon this plan, spring of 99, they do a Series A fundraise. They raise more money. And they also meet Hamid Korodomi, who's from Netscape, and he's kind of done with Netscape because Netscape had been just bought by AOL. And they recruit him as a chief revenue officer. And Omid tries to sell the enterprise model, kind of fails. So things are not looking good on the revenue front. It's year 2000, and the technology bubble is starting to burst. The customer base is still growing because people love it, love
Mhm.
Google, but they're running out of money again. So they decide to do banner ads because they just have got no money. And here's the interesting thing is, in this day, 2000, I want you to think about
Yeah. Yeah.
this. You have to set up a sales force to go out and sell banner ads to agencies. People picking up the phone and walking into offices, reaching out to ad agencies.
Yeah. They didn't have a platform for buying and selling and banner ads. I mean, gosh, they were never like Google ads, it in the most recent memory are always context related, right? But
Yes.
if you're just selling banner ads to an agency, right, you might be looking for dog food and you're gonna see car ads and you're gonna see ads for
Right.
high-tech servers and, all kinds of things that don't have anything to do with what you're looking for.
And that's how the early banner ads work.
Mhm.
Hold that thought. You're always one step ahead of me, Dave.
Oh,
Hold
sorry.
that
Oh, yeah,
thought. No, this is awesome.
I'm holding
But
it.
what I want to stress is when we talk about how the world has changed, in 2000, Google decides to do banner ads, and how they have to do it is a sales force going out, reaching out to agencies, and agencies faxed in the banner ads.
Okay. Yeah, sure. It would take too long for
I'm
'em to
not I'm not making this up. This is how much the world has changed in 25 years.
fax me the banner.
Salespeople going out to sell ads to agencies for banners on Google where the insertions were sent back by fax.
Mhm. For the people under 20 listening to us,
Who
a
don't even
fax
know what the hell a
machine
fax machine is. Yeah.
a fax machine. Yeah, well, we won't go there.
Yeah. Now, here's what they do. They also say to the advertisers at this point, Google will only accept text for banner ads for speed. And again, they start with the model of CPM, so cost per 1,000 views, which is basically how all the agencies were doing it, but they did do a twist on it. They sold around this idea of intent, that the ads will be showing keyword based, and they were the first to do that. And what they did is they did a test to prove this. They set themselves up as this was really cool. They set themselves up as an Amazon affiliate and dynamically generated a link on a book search and served up an affiliate ad. And they were able to sell a whole pile of books. So the test proved the idea worked. And then what they did is they went out and they white labeled this for others. For example, Yahoo did it, and it would show on the bottom of Yahoo, powered by Google.
Uh-huh.
But here's the thing. As soon as you start saying powered by Google, what are you doing? You're creating share of voice.
Uh-huh.
Share of voice,
Well, yeah,
right?
why don't I just go to Google?
Why don't I just go to Google? And look, we had saw this a few years earlier when Hotmail was launched by Microsoft, where you would get this email and go powered by Hotmail. And you'd be like, what's this Hotmail thing? And suddenly everybody was getting Hotmail accounts, right? No one has a
Yeah.
Hotmail account any longer. They have Gmail accounts. They hardly have Gmail accounts anymore. But it
No,
kind
I could tell you that we've got a lot of people at Wizard Academy that email us off
still
of
have Hotmail
Hotmail.
accounts.
Sure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's still
Even
around.
some
Okay.
Yahoos. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, you know,
Yahoo,
there's
the
still
email, not the customer. They're not a Yahoo, but they have an account there.
So in October 2000, they launched AdWords with a test of 350 advertisers. And then in 2002, they launched pay-per-click advertising. And then 2004, they go public. Now, here's one of the other things I want to talk about in terms of share of voice. They had a couple things going on with share of voice. They had that powered by Google, which created share of voice. Because we often think of share of voice as being just advertising, right? In terms of how much are people knowing about us. I remember knowing nothing about Google and then learning about Google when Google went public, because Google dragged out going public. Like it took them, they talked about it for a long time, but it meant it was financial press, it was front page news. It got a lot of PR and a lot of press around the time that they went public. So that going public for them also created massive share of voice, because there was suddenly a whole community that were not technologically savvy that were now suddenly aware of, oh, there's this Google thing.
And they're in the news. Yeah. So I've got an idea for us, Steve.
Yeah. Okay.
All
Let's
right.
hear it. Let's hear it.
Let's pick up part 2 of Google at the point they go public.
All right, let's do that. That'll be an episode we'll do in the future. Yeah.
We don't do very many two-parters, but we're already, kind of a lengthy Empire Builder podcast here.
Oh yeah,
And
this was I was just taking it to this point, but I think that
yeah.
would be very
Oh,
interesting because
okay.
look,
Ju-
Google is a massive force in the world today, and I think it would
Oh,
be interesting
unbelievable. Yeah.
to do the next part, because there's all sorts of things that they did to continue this
I
path
mean,
of
we
attracting eyeballs.
we haven't even touched on Gmail yet,
No, we have
right?
not. We've
Because
not.
that happened after they went
Correct.
public.
Let's do that.
Okay.
So, but here's the lesson that I think that I want people to understand is share of voice comes from other things, but we're going to explore that even more in this part 2. I like the idea of doing this part 2. They really looked at this problem from a completely different set of eyeballs. And this is where I commend Google from the standpoint of there's all of this stuff in the internet, and what we really want to know is who is the authority. They looked at the academic world for how does it establish authority, and how authority is established is how much is your work cited by others, right? How much are other, and so now Google has of course expanded that to direct search, and there's all these other things, but they've always looked at it from the standpoint of who in this space has the most authority, who is really and truly the expert on this topic, and we're going to try to figure that out and serve that up.
Yeah.
That's core to what their objective has been.
We could talk about Google for 4 or 5 episodes probably.
We may, but we know
Okay.
we're going to do one more.
All right. Well,
Awesome.
thanks for bringing it up, and we did mention their name. So actually, if we just put this out there, hey Google, why don't you send us all the talking points we need for part 2? There, I've put it out there. Let me know how that works.
Yeah, my email's about to get just slammed.
Uh-huh.
All right, thanks,
You won't
David.
know it's from them though. You won't know. You won't know.
That's
They're that good.
that's true. That's true.
Thank you, Stephen.
All right, thanks, David.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. Please share us, subscribe on your favorite podcast app, and leave us a big, fat, juicy 5-star rating and review at Apple Podcasts. And if you'd like to schedule your own 90-minute empire building session, you can do it at empirebuildingprogram.com.